So I think we can begin. Good afternoon. My name is Sedef Diering, and I would like to welcome you to this panel on building migration partnerships that deliver. I am the Director for Migration Dialogues and Cooperation at ICMPD, and I have the pleasure to moderate one of the last panel sessions of the day, as said, on building migration partnerships that deliver. I hope you still have some appetite to hear about migration partnerships. We've been hearing about different ways of achieving migration partnerships throughout the day, and I think it would be a pleasure for us right now to hear from my guests how actually these partnerships can deliver, under which circumstances, what are the successes that we see in our lives, are there concrete good examples, and where and how. So actually migration partnerships is a recurring theme of the VMC. Those of you who have been here in the previous Vienna migration conferences will remember that in 2021, the whole VMC actually took the topic of revitalizing migration partnerships as its central focus. But also last year, in 2022, we discussed where countries' interests and strategies converge and diverge, intending to draw the right balance, right formula for building migration partnerships, stronger ones. So, as we all know, migration partnerships in general are all about mutual benefit. And there are indeed some key principles and parameters that will most likely be highlighted during our discussion today by my guests. Questions such as, why can partnership be a good tool? What makes it an effective approach? What tangible results can we expect in the area of migration? These are key questions to understand the benefit and impact of migration partnerships. Also, it's important to establish, maybe during this panel discussion also, whether we really walk the talk about migration partnerships. Today, I am joined by senior actors in countries experiencing migration in different regions in different ways, as well as a representative from a civil society organization that is actively engaging with partners in and outside of Europe, and inside and outside of government, to discuss how we build migration partnerships that deliver. Our aim in this session is to build on past conversations, also the past two VMCs, and elsewhere to identify what is new. Are there new elements in migration partnerships? Has progress been made, and where, and how has this progress been achieved? So, without a doubt, partnerships have become an important tool in migration governance. And for them to be successful, building trust is fundamental. And this trust building usually requires time, commitment, and shared responsibility, of course, mutual interests. With that said, I'm pleased to have this group of distinguished speakers here with me today, once again to discuss what has worked and maybe what doesn't work, how can we make migration partnerships work. I would like to introduce my guests right now. I am thrilled to have by my side three speakers with different backgrounds. Mr. Hüseyin is Deputy President of the Presidency of Migration Management within the Ministry of Interior of Türkiye. He actively engages in the implementation of policies and strategies related to migration, but also in migration partnerships, and trying to ensure effective coordination between different agencies and organizations, both in the country and outside of Türkiye. Ambassador Akinremi Alade Bolaji is also Director for Economic Trade and Investment at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria. Under his role and his leadership, Ambassador Bolaji has facilitated trade and investment missions such as Nigeria-Brazil Business and Economic Forum in São Paulo and Nigeria-Ireland Business and Investment Forum in Dublin. The ambassador has also served at the Nigerian embassy in Addis Ababa and was a minister plenipotentiary at the permanent mission of Nigeria to the UN in New York. Ms. Anne Dussart has served as head of Caritas International Belgium's Department of Asylum and Migration since 2003. She is also a member and the president of International Catholic Migration Commission Europe-Sport, a member of the Migration Working Group Caritas Europa, and the steering group of the European Reintegration Support Organization. So let me express my gratitude to three speakers, panelists, for your participation in this panel. Actually, we had we were expecting two more panelists from Portugal and Bangladesh, but they both had to cancel yesterday due to sickness and other reasons, due to unexpected circumstances, and they cannot be here with us today. Without extending further, we will have 2 rounds of questions for each speaker. We will then also have some time for questions both from the audience and, of course, online audience here through the questions and answers function on WHOA. We heard today several migration challenges, a difficult migration landscape, both in our countries, in the regions, and globally. I think we're all aware that we are several challenges at the same time, and this morning, Vice President Skinas also talked of a polycrisis situation. And we are in this background of, let's say, a polycrisis situation, a very volatile migration landscape. I would like to hear from our speakers, and I will start with you, Mr. Kirk, whether your priorities as Türkiye have changed over the past year when it comes to migration cooperation and migration partnerships, and if there have been changes in your priorities, how they have influenced your interest in developing migration partnerships or in certain areas in particular.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say hello. As you all know, migration movements towards Turkey have further increased in recent years. Situation in some countries of origin have continued to result in more attempts to enter Turkey irregularly. Furthermore, due to changes in migration routes, we have started to become a transit and destination country for some new countries. As a result of this, while traditional approach to keep our migration cooperation framework quite active remained, due to rising needs, we have gradually expanded scope and manner of our cooperation have been expanded gradually. These dynamics well affected our approach, as also well reflected in annual theme determined for the Turkey chairmanship of ICMPD. Our main focus has been to work on root causes in countries of origins in order to have as sustainable solutions countries of origins. For us, it's very important to have a good dialogue at bilateral and regional level. We aim to discuss joint issues that are important for us and our partner countries. More considerately, in those cooperation frameworks, return and reintegration issues become as our priority areas. Thank you.
Okay, that's very straightforward, very direct answer. Thank you. Let me go to then Anne Dussart from Caritas Belgium. We all know that civil society organizations play or have the potential to play a crucial role when it comes to migration-related issues. Civil society organizations are active on the ground, whether at local level, national, or international. So Caritas International is, of course, also a unique example because because of the fundamental areas of work that you actually conduct worldwide in many, many countries, operating in over 200 countries actually worldwide across Europe, Africa, Oceania, Asia, North and South America, the Caribbean. Caritas ardently responds to complex migration emergencies, engaging in development programs, humanitarian aid, promoting capacity building, advocating and promoting human mobility and dignity. So the initial actions of Caritas Belgium were toward welcoming foreigners in Belgium following World War II, but I think your work has changed over time to a great extent. Nowadays, your activities include the provision of international assistance in emergency situations, addressing pressing issues such as poverty, displacement, access to healthcare, education, and so on and so forth. So, from your perspective, why is it important for civil society organizations to partner with governments, but also maybe with other civil society organizations, with other actors? There are other actors out there as well. In the field of migration, how do you see your role as a civil society organization in migration partnerships? Do you have a role? How is that exercise? And why do you think we need cooperation at multiple levels? Because most of the time, and I'm very happy that today we've seen different actors coming from different sectors in the discussions, and I think we are now increasingly trying to talk with actors beyond the public sector, but very often, of course, migration is regarded as a public state-dominant sector. So, over to you, please.
Thank you. It's a quite large question and not so easy, but you gave already a kind of start of answer because, like you said, the DNA of Caritas International is, of course, to be part of a network, an international network, so we are used to work with partners. So this is what we do every day. We have also chosen to work, and our main activities are grassroots activities. So we will advocate through activities that we do on the ground, because we think that we then have a right to speak, because we see daily what's happening on the ground. The difficulty that we have as civil society organization today is the link with the government, with the public sector, with the way the public sector using the way they want to go straight forward. Let's explain why. I think we need a partnership with governments, but if you need public funding, and it was mentioned, I think, completely in the beginning with the first speakers, we need innovative actions. What we see today is that often when government asks to collaborate with us, we are seen as a service providers. And so service providing is mostly executing what governments want to do on the ground like they see it. And so the flexibility and the innovative way is for us sometimes very difficult. And so every day we have to balance with the need to use public funding in the best way, but the need to use them also in a way that we serve what we need to serve, that it's right-based, that it's needed for the persons we want to help, and sometimes it's very difficult to balance. And so in the past we were programming, we were making projects, and now we are responding on tendering. And so when we work on tendering procedure, we have sometimes the feeling as civil society that quality is not in the basic of an appeal that is done by the governments. And also the innovative way is sometimes very lost in the tendering procedure. But I think complementarity of the bottom-up and the top-down is mostly important. And if we use both, a top-down approach by the needs of governments in countries of origin and in Europe by the donors, but also looking what's happening on the ground and going to mutual explanation, listen to each other, then we can go one step forwards. But it's very difficult. And I hear the previous group that was speaking was about the difficulties for labor migration. I'm going back to the European situation. I didn't hear the need of working with civil society. It was with public authority, it was working with municipalities, and I think there is also a need to include the civil society. We work every day with refugees, with persons that arrived and that work and that we integrate. So I hear about integration, about housing. So I think sometimes we are forgotten. And at last resort, suddenly there is something like the civil society that we can work with. And I think this is something that we need to emphasize a little bit more here in Europe, in our own countries, but also in the countries of origin. Working with local society is very important, very, very important.
Thank you very much. You've raised very important issues there, and I would like to come back to that in the second round. I heard the word, of course, service providers, and indeed this is also a word I hear all the time in connection with the civil society organizations when it comes to certain areas of migration, work with refugees, work with returning migrants, returnees, but you do have the, of course, direct connection with the community, with the migrants and refugees, and there are, I think, certain missing links here that we can talk upon in the second round. I'd like to now, of course, go to my third guest, Ambassador Bolaji. Nigeria, of course, is a very big country, having the largest economy in Africa, the most populous country in Africa, and it's a country that grapples with several development challenges. There are, of course, issues related to employment, economic challenges. As a result, many young Nigerians are driven to seek opportunities abroad. And you also have a complex migration landscape in the country, a complex interplay of factors resulting in both internal and international migration flows. So, in the perspective of your country, have there been changing priorities for you over the past year when it comes to migration, your migration cooperation and partnerships? What has influenced this shift, if there has been a shift, and what priorities remain constant for you?
Oh, thank you so much, Madam Moderator, and good afternoon to all the participants and their colleagues. It's a great honor for me to be here, and I must congratulate the Vienna Migration Conference. This is your 30th anniversary, and particularly the government of Austria for inviting me here today. ICMPD has been a partner with Nigeria, and we're very glad we are able to make this. Straight to your question, whether Nigerians' priority has changed, I will wholly respond that we are reinforcing it. It hasn't drastically changed. Rather, we are reestablishing those priorities that have been set in our national migration policy. And I'm glad to announce to you that Nigeria subscribes fully to the ideals of the Global Compact of Migration. We believe in orderly and regular migration, and we don't promote irregular migration as a government. We don't support. We understand that Nigeria is a very large economy, large population, just as you have said, but not just large. Our demography is very significant. We have about 70% that are just between the age of 18 and 20. So we're very large. As a matter of fact, with youth bulge, Nigeria is a source of labor and workforce for many of the European countries, a solution which I've had here today of many challenges that many European countries are facing. I was very enthused with the contribution made by Yanina, the lady who left a while ago, telling us about the gap in the workforce and the need to collaborate. So Nigeria subscribes greatly to partnership. And we are doing this very well with ICMPD and other migration organizations. We are reinforcing our partnership with all European countries and globally. I'm glad to let you know that at about the time that the Russian-Ukraine war was taking place last year, I was personally signing the Nigeria-UK Migration Partnership in Westminster in London on the same day, February 24. And incidentally, as Israel armor war is going on in the Mediterranean this year again, I'm here in migration conference in Vienna. This is very significant to us. We see unsettlement globally. Nigeria has its own fair share of it, but our position has been to maintain partnership in ensuring that irregular migration is curbed. We must commend ICMPD that have facilitated Nigeria and Niger cooperation to combat trafficking in persons. This is a success story, and I was personally involved in kickstarting this 2021, and we had a huge success. Today, ICMPD is doing very well in Nigeria with a project in Enugu and a lot of other support that we are getting. So many European countries that we have a migration partnership with. Austria, for example, where we speak to capacity building, which is very successful. Switzerland, for example, is a leading country in providing for voluntary return, those who want to return, a huge sum of amount to resettle them in terms of admission. So we have serious collaboration with countries. This year, we were able to conclude our migration partnership with EU, Nigeria and EU. It took us about 3 or 4 years to negotiate that, but we have successfully done that now. And it's an example for other countries, particularly in Africa. I think Nigeria is a leading voice when it comes to migration in Africa. And we need a lot of partnership in this area. So in terms of whether our priority has changed, it hasn't, but we are trying to reinforce it. And I can tell you a little about my government, particularly since May 29 this year, when we have a new government in place in Nigeria with the leadership of President Bolaji Ahmed Tinubu, who came to power May 29 with a tag of renewed hope. Renewed hope to Nigerians, because all over the world you find Nigerians. As a matter of fact, somebody said, if you get to any little village and you cannot find a Nigeria, don't stay there, it is not safe. That's the truth, because with over 200 million people, so much energy, they are everywhere in the world. We are leading in fintech in Africa. Out of the 7 unicorns, Nigeria has 6 flutterwaves, and the rest of them are Nigerians. The United States today, of migrant community in the United States, Nigeria is the most educated. Nigeria is the speaker in Canada today. Of course, in UK, the Minister of Trade is a Nigerian. Also, the Secretary of Trade in America is a Nigerian. So we understood Nigerian position, the blessing that naturally we are endowed with. So this government came up with a 4D foreign policy agenda, which is democracy, demography, development, and diaspora. We are a very democratic government. Since 1999, we've had successful civilian government. Our democratic institutions are being strengthened on a daily basis. Like I speak to the issue of demography, with 220 plus million and over 70% youth and young, very agile and active. You can be very sure that, as it has been proposed, in the next couple of years, Nigeria will be the 3rd most populous country in the world. And so I can allay the fear of all the companies that are talking about gap in workforce, that Nigeria is going to provide you enough workforce. That's an assurance from Nigeria. So our policies under this new government is to ensure that this 3D directs our foreign policy, including migration. Demography is very important to us. Democracy, development, and I will speak to development. I think in terms of migration policy, we need a lot more collaboration with the EU. Because when you see that the policies that we see EU bringing up does not show much for partnership. Europe still need to learn a lot that in partnership, you don't, it should not tilt towards one side alone. I see a lot of frustrations on the part of speakers here when you have to wait for 6 months, 1 year to get work permit from your country. In terms of Africa, it's even worse, particularly from sub-Saharan Africa. Europe is yet to treat Africa as one, and particularly to know that the majority of Africans are in the sub-Saharan. So we need to understand the partnership more than we are currently doing. So that is going to be an area that our government, in terms of policy, we need more engagement, we need more understanding, because you cannot provide a solution that leaves one party out of the equation. When you try to solve this problem from your own understanding, it's going to bring a lot of frustration. It's going to bring a lot of misunderstanding. There are going to be a lot of gaps. You need the youth bulge in Africa, in Nigeria in particular, and you need to walk the talk. And so if we don't come together, like we have this Vienna Migration Conference, we should be talking of Africa Migration Conference in Nigeria as the most populous African country. We should be talking about ICMPD getting more active, participating more in civil society, just like our sister said in Nigeria, 3 more activities in school, in academia, because as at now, I think ICMPD is still very moderate in terms of engagement. So our policy is very wide, but we need to reinforce it. We need to ensure that we get the benefit of those migration partnership that we have. We need to do more to ensure that we bring in the private sector. Europe wants to do a lot of control of influx from Africa into Europe. Quite good. Nobody wants to encourage irregular migration, but at the same time, a lot of European goods are coming into Africa, and our young ones are being rendered jobless because we trade, and our trade is very imbalanced against Africa, against Nigeria. So all these, we need to put it together. Migration cannot be treated in isolation. We have to look at it holistically as a business venture. And that means we have to come to table to discuss realistically.
Thank you. I was almost going to interrupt you. Please leave something for the second round as well, but I think this was a very clear message as well. And the appeal for having a holistic approach and, of course, having all the parties in the equation, in the formula, sitting together and looking for these solutions. I think that's a very, very clear message, but I think this was a warming up session. In the second round, I want to go into some concrete examples and, of course, also touch upon the principles of successful migration partnerships, how we walk the talk. But now I want to go back to my guests from Türkiye. Obviously, Türkiye is a country, it's a member state of ICMPD, but also it's a country that is in a very volatile region with increasing insecurity in its borders, particularly, of course, in Syria, but Afghanistan. We have, of course, also economic instability, violence and internal conflicts close to Türkiye. And of course, the prospects of a better life in Türkiye have also made the country a destination country increasingly. for irregular migrants, but also refugees. So, and then, as was also mentioned this morning, the two devastating earthquakes have hit the country, affecting not only the Turkish population, but also the Syrians under temporary protection in Turkey. So with all that landscape, you have pointed out very clearly, very briefly, you want to focus on the countries of origin, you want to focus on durable solutions, you want to focus on return and reintegration. Nonetheless, of course, with all these different dynamics and with that focus on the countries of origin, migration partnerships are indispensable. We cannot, I think we established that it's not possible to deliver on these expectations, on these demands, if there is, of course, not well-defined migration partnerships. So with that in mind, I would like to ask you whether there have been any migration partnership approaches or special approaches that you have found successful as Turkey in your engagement with the countries of origin. And can you please share maybe one or two examples of partnerships that has actually delivered results from your perspective?
Thank you. Our migration dialogue has resulted to visit our counterparts in their countries and host them in Turkey as well. Those visits both introduced migration priorities in a mutual manner and helped to know each other, both at strategic and operational level. Thanks to knowing each other, it became easier to follow up operational aspects of migration management. Let me explain an example. I would like to inform you on a national assisted voluntary return mechanism, which is also functioning in cooperation with our counterparts in countries of origin. Stakeholders of this system, such as Turkish Red Crescent and Turkish Cooperation Agency, work with their counterparts in countries of origins to implement this program. Having in place such mechanism have resulted to increased voluntary returns from Turkey. Secondly, based on our well-established bilateral cooperation at national level, as well as regional level currently, we are working to expand this cooperation further to have sustainable and structural cooperation. To serve this purpose, we are aiming to establish an international migration cooperation center in Istanbul. This center will aim not only at exchange cooperation between public institutions, but also private sector, civil society, and academic institution, in order to expand our partnership at all levels. Based on the political dialogue and our strategic cooperation with our countries. This center will provide an opportunity to expand scope and manner of cooperation along the Eastern Mediterranean migration routes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I understand your engagement has been mainly through visits at both strategic and technical level, exchanges at both of these levels, and of course also working with, in a way, also civil society organizations such as the Turkish Red Crescent to actually work on areas that you find of priority for in your country in the area of return and reintegration. Let's move then to a civil society organization again. I'm back with you, Anne, with Caritas. So how we have established how important it is for civil society organizations to partner with other civil society organizations, but also with governments. You want to go beyond being just a service provider. You seek a role, another role in this, let's say, equation. And so how can this, how can you find that role? Are you being heard? How can your cooperation with the government, with other actors, be made more effective? I'm asking a couple of questions at the same time, but I'd like to also hear from you whether there were instances where you felt, yes, we made a difference in this partnership, we were being heard, or you had really a positive influence, and when it was not possible, why?
I think I will go back to the Belgium situation, because I think Belgium has a good history of working and collaboration with the civil society. I think we need to underline that, and I know that the Belgian institution and politicians try to bring it also on a higher level, and I think that's good, so that our voice is going through the political landscape also. Some example to make it more clear. For example, we have guardians for unaccompanied minors, and we noticed that there were a lot of migrants in transit for the last 4 or 5 years. And so we can go then to the FedAsyl, who is our major donor, explaining what we see on the ground and explaining that we think we can have an added value for these minors in transit. There were a lot of Moroccans, but also Algerians and also Syrians, young guys, just traveling around Europe, also being in Belgium. And so we could discuss with the Belgian government that we as civil society can have an added value, because we, and I think this is an important word that we see in all our projects, is that we can have trust with the beneficiaries, with the migrants, something that sometimes for governments it's more difficult. We still have this independent voice, even if we receive public funding, and for us this is a very important decision if we jump in a project, yes or no. We need to be the voice and to listen what's happening on the ground in a certain independency. We need to report back, we need to be complementary, and so it's also important to be trustful for the government when they are our donors. So in this fact, we are working now for more than 5 years, working with these migrants, with these unaccompanied minors in transit. Do we solve the whole issue? No. Do we help the people? Yes, partially. We are just little helps, and I think this is very important. Jumping to another project that we started now recently, FedAsyl tried to reach the migrants. They have a special project on reach out migrants, and they face and they see the difficulties that they are a public actor. So we went for a more than 1 year discussion about what could be the role of a civil society organization in a same place offering social support to migrants together with a public authority. And we started 2 weeks ago to open an info point in a complete transparency with each other's role, where we work together with social workers from the civil society are together in the same place as workers from FedAsyl. And I think this is a mutual trust that we built for years. And this trust reflects also in the activities we are doing. And so I think by that we can grow and build up concrete partnership. The most difficult partnership we have, and I think we have to point it out today, because a lot of interveners this morning and this afternoon, and we were discussing, speaks about return without going further than just return. But what after return? And is return possible? And return and civil society. So we managed to be a partner in Belgium for many years on return by social workers, but also working in the countries of origin with our local partners, knowing that it's a public funding that they receive to support migrants that return home. So it's growing, it's coming everywhere. In every discourse, we need more return. No, we need return, sustainable return, where the people is in the center of every activity, the European politicians and also the countries of origin. Collaboration and partnership in Europe and in the countries of origin. We try to do that on a civil society level, and I think we achieve good results in most of the countries. I was recently in Armenia with my authority, with the government, and we meet officials, and we learn from each other, and we listen to each other, and I think this is very important that we can be a voice together. On return, it is much more difficult, and I need to underline that for a civil society, it's not the most easiest way to be partnering and active in the return and the reintegration. So I have also controlling mechanism in my own organization. So I have also a board and an assembly general where we need to present our project to see if you are ethically in line with what we are doing. It was a whole challenge for us as Caritas International Belgium to work on the reintegration that now is implementing by Frontex, the GRS, Joint Reintegration Service. But what did we see? We saw that for many years there was a voice from the civil society in Europe, but also in the countries of origin, to say you need to work with a local service provider who is in line with the country of origin, who is in line with Nigeria, for example, in line with Armenia, who speaks with the governments, and we also try to push and look what is necessary on the ground. We think it's very important, but ethically it's not so easy to work worldwide. But harmonization was one of the key messages for the last 5 years. And so I think we have also a role as civil society to take our responsibility, even in a measure of return and reintegration, where you see different European countries working on how to implement return to countries of origin. But if you see that you have harmonization and that you can build together, because I think we build it together, even if we will not say it's Caritas or it's a local organization. We have the impression that what is making now is something that we can work with, even with the difficulties. If we see now that Europe's foreseen a reintegration budget for mostly of the returnees, I think it's a step forwards. The next step is how to put, and I think my colleagues here will agree on that, how will you give, again, the autonomy in the countries of origin? Where is controlling stop? Where is it taking over by the countries of origin? And this is something we need to advocate, and that is an advocacy message through what we see on the ground. I think many of the countries on return are really doing a good job, are all adults and know what they are doing with the citizens. So reintegration is really doing in partnership with our local partners, civil society, but also with the country of origin. And their voice is also very important to bring it back to Europe, so that the projects and the program are need-basis with a respect of the fundamental rights. And these two key messages is something that we have ongoing on all our projects.
That's so much work at multiple levels, different dimensions, working with the countries of, especially, I mean, in this particular example you've mentioned, return and reintegration, working with the country of destination, origin in both locations, returns, reintegration assistance on the policy side, advocacy side, but also in in ensuring safeguards, certain standards, getting that feedback, bringing it back to the different actors, the public sector, of course, but also working with other civil society organizations. That's very, very complex and very multidimensional. Do you think, I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask another question, but when you get that feedback, when you have those also realities from the ground, the certain practices you see and the shortcomings or also good practices, do you think that when you bring that feedback to the table, it is being also made part of that partnership? Do you really influence? Do you think you you are given the opportunity to influence that partnership?
I think we need to take the opportunity of being present on audiences to explain what's happening, to be the voice. I think this is one of the roles of the civil society. Do we influence the best we can? And we want to do it better and always better, and if governments and institutions can follow, then we are very happy. And no, it's not always the way we think it would have to go, but you need to continue and have the way that you want to have your final destination. You know where you go. Where do we want to go? It's in Europe or in Belgium, working with migrants as human beings, integrate them the best they can, that they receive all the social services they needed, together with the civil society and with the public authorities. And on return is listen to the voice of the local actors. We help the local actors in the civil society to have contacts with their authorities, because sometimes it's not always easy. So we have a role, a small role. We are not on the barricade, we are not crying, we are just trying to do it on the ground, influence by what we see really on the ground. What we try to do, and what is very important, is to monitor also what we are doing. We are not just working on return and integration, it's listening, but it's also do monitoring, and monitoring together with member states is also very important, that they see what we say in Europe is really happening. And like I say, we have to listen, because I really think we need to trust the countries, trust the migrants, and not be scared of a human being that is in Europe, that has to return, that has to stay. That's all. I think we need to trust each other.
Thank you very much. Now, of course, there are very, very different experiences here, very different contexts, but going back to you, Ambassador Bolaji, you've talked about Nigeria's priorities. You've also given some examples of migration partnerships, and you've talked about the Memorandum of Understanding signed in, I think, 2021 with Niger, between Niger and Nigeria. Talked about the partnership with the UK and the need to actually step up the partnership with the European Union and its member states. But building on this example of Niger and Nigeria, of course, we have again also different now situation in Niger. But I would like to hear your views, maybe more concretely, on successful examples of cooperation when it comes to maybe returns and reintegration, but also perhaps legal pathways for migration, mobility issues. Do you have these examples? Signing agreements is, of course, is very good, but are they implemented, put into practice, in implementation in real life? What have you been able to achieve? What was successful and what did not work out?
All right. Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Talking about the pathway to legal migration, it's pretty difficult. As a matter of fact, we are able to sign general migration partnership agreement with some countries, but we've not been able to sign labor migration agreement. And that means a lot still needs to be done to begin to consider migrants from Nigeria to be legally recruited in other countries. We've tried with Saudi Arabia, we've tried with with UK, we've tried with a couple of EU members. Generally, it's the general migration partnership that we are successful with. On the labor migration, well, we are not yet successful with that. But I think we will keep trying to see how that comes to be. Our concern is, for example, with the UK, Nigerian doctors are everywhere in the UK, nurses that are trained in Nigeria, despite our very low standards. But as soon as they finish and they are qualified, they move to the United Kingdom, pass their PLAB, and start. And so we felt like for a country that is generating such a huge number of medical doctors, we should have a kind of giving back from the United Kingdom in terms of either medical care in Nigeria, health facilities, hospitals. And so we started that in our partnership agreement with them. So if you cannot have a proper labor migration agreement, we can also ask that you give back in terms of training them back in Nigeria, building facilities in Nigeria. So this we are doing. But there are a couple of success stories. For example, Denmark. Denmark is training our immigration service in what is called monies. Denmark is doing a lot of collaboration in terms of migration with Nigeria. So we have a couple of examples that in terms of success story, we have given an example of Nigeria and Niger, and Nigeria, Austria, Nigeria, Germany, and a couple of EU members, and of course EU as a whole. Generally, on partnership, I think for most sub-Saharan Africa, we need to sit to analyze the challenges we have together. A situation where we have one solution fit it all, one size fit it all, it's not going to work for all the African countries because we are at different stages of development and our issues also differ. Some have resources, some lack capacity. And so they have to be considered on each cases on their merit. This will be my suggestion. I don't know if I got your question correct, Madam Moderator.
Yes, you did. You did. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We still have roughly about 20 minutes, and I'd like to come towards the closing. I see that there are questions already from the audience or through the online system. But I would like to maybe before that give you an opportunity, to the speakers, an opportunity to say maybe final words in 1 minute if you still wish to make a statement, and then I will move to the questions after that.
It's okay.
Anybody who would like to take the floor for final?
Yeah. I think if I'm to say something, it would be how can EU support migration dialogue in Africa, particularly in the sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm not talking about one-off discussion, but a more sustainable and more coordinated way that we have the Vienna Migration Conference, whereby everybody look up to it. We need a more systematic approach to migration because migration happens at the local level. And I've heard about awareness, particularly from Caritas. We need to get to the local level. We need to take this message to them. We need a more coordinated approach and it can only be done in a place like Nigeria because that is where the huge number of irregular migrants are being generated from. A lot of them are going through the desert, going through from Nigeria, going from Kano State, for example, going to Niger, from Niger to Libya, and a lot of them die in the desert there. Agadez is filled with almost 90% Nigerians. Agadez is in Niger Republic. Have been there a couple of times. The last time I went with ICMPD, we find a young lady of about 13, 14 years old who has become delusional. You know, she's been raped over and over. She's gone beside herself. She couldn't identify anything, you know. And you wonder, how was such a lady, young lady of 14 years, taken away from her parents and to be found in the desert of Agadez? So we need that kind of coordinated approach that goes to the local. And we are doing something close to this with the UK. It is called the Prevent program. you know, whereby they nip a society on time where they are likely to be susceptible to crime or to irregular migration, and then they try to find alternative activity for them, for the young ones there, so that they don't become victims. Such program is very important. It can only happen if we sit together, move from community to community. Nigeria is a very large country, but it's not beyond solution. We are ready, and this is the new commitment from the government of Nigeria. We have realized our size. We have realized that by nature, Nigeria is the authentic voice for Africa, and we are ready to stand in that role. But we need partners from Europe. We hope we'll find.
Thank you, thank you. Maybe let's move to the...
Yeah, I think what is very important in the partnership is what I said previously, is make the civil society part of the discussion, not only as a service provider, but as a full, experienced professional partner. That will not work on the quantity maybe, but on the quality. So in Belgium, 3 students arrived in October by a humanitarian corridor. It was a huge challenge that it will not attract hundreds of students for the ministry. But I think we need to continue to improve and to challenge also through projects our governments by open their eyes on possibilities that is on the ground possible. So 3 students coming from different countries is not massive, but can maybe be an incentive for the future. And I think this is also the role of the civil society.
Thank you, thank you. I would like to take questions right now. We have some questions online, but I would like to first ask the audience in the room if there are any questions to my guests. Yes, I see one in the back. Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Thomas Muscat. I'm from the Maltese Ministry for Foreign Affairs. We talked a lot about the importance of partnership, and I'm sure that none of us here are here to contest that. But I have a question about the timing, more than anything. At least in my experience, there's this institution backlash against long-term results. It's understandable. They want immediate results, but partnerships, if they're holistic and systematic by nature, sometimes the results will take months, if not years. So my question is if any of the panelists have any insights on how we might be able to sell to policymakers and decision makers the idea to invest in partnerships, even if they will see results in the next 5 years, 10 years, and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a second question. Maybe let's also take that one.
Thank you so much. My name is Janina Sturner. I'm from the University of Nuremberg in Germany. And I was just wondering, because you were talking about partnerships, and we have representatives from national government, from an international civil society organization. And these partnerships, basically, they play out at a local level. So my question to all of you is how to make sure that it's local actors, and I mean migrant and refugee-led organizations, local government, local NGOs that are at the heart of these partnerships and that bring in the ideas that are needed on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very relevant questions. When we also talk about partnerships, what does it really mean in practice? I think it's important to touch upon, of course, the time, the period, the longevity of a partnership, but also, of course, the engagement really with the people concerned. Would anyone like to answer this question?
On the second question on partnership on the ground, of course, and maybe what is very important also when we speak or with returnees or with refugees is a voice of themselves. So we work also a lot with a focus group. So we just not think that we know everything, but we think that returnees, migrants who return home, can be also the best ambassadors. So we do monitoring missions. So I think we work also with them and with the local authority. For sure, it's a local entity. When you do an integration, you work with local identity and also with other civil society organizations. So it's normal that you work on different levels.
Thank you. Ambassador Bolaji?
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. The first question, I think, like all goals, you need to have long-term, medium-term, and short-term. And we're doing that in Nigeria in a partnership arrangement with the EU and some other countries. Yes, we may have in the short term, and it may not be accomplished. But what is important is that those goals are there, those visions are there, and we have the commitment to realize them. We have the passion in Nigeria to go into partnership in terms of migration, and we have enough experts to drive it. For us, we have a whole ministry that handles migration, refugee affairs, internally displaced people, and humanitarian affairs generally, you know.
Thank you. I would, Mr. Kirk?
It's okay.
Okay.
No comment.
Thank you. Then I'd like to move to the online questions. I'll pick one of them. There are 4. So we hear a lot. You also have mentioned it, Ambassador Bolaji, about comprehensive or holistic cooperation being more effective than maybe single-issue partnerships. But what does it mean for you in practice, or for any of you? What does a partnership mean in practice for you, especially if we're talking about a comprehensive, holistic partnerships, cooperation?
Yes. First and foremost, we need to have a clear assessment of the push and pull factor as specific to each area. For example, in Nigeria, the countries who endow with resources, human material, there is need for a very clear analysis of what is creating migration issue in Nigeria. And whoever is going to be a partner in this area has to be very clear. Number 2, with mineral resources in Nigeria, with a lot of liquid in the economy, we find a lot of businesses, foreign businesses that are doing well, yet poverty continues to expand. So there's need for us to look into what is responsible for this. Because if we tackle the issue of corruption and we tackle the issue of illicit financial flows, if we tackle the issue of illegal mining and a lot of activities that are impoverishing people, we will be able to reduce the issue of irregular migration. 4th, if we also sit together with the local community to see things that are traditionally applicable to them and maintain them, rather than imposing exotic and foreign things on them, whereby a lot of cottage industries have closed down, giving way to a lot of modern way that are imported. So today, our economy is so import-driven, and a lot of debt incurred, and a lot of people impoverished. So the richer get richer, or the rich get richer, and the poor get poorer. You will say, but that's the duty of government. Yes, but that's why we talk about partnership, because a lot of foreign elements reinforce each other. So migration is not a standalone subject. It's completely in a circle of economic, trade, investment, and professionalism. So talking about comprehensive, holistic approach, we tackle it from individual country, regional basis, and across the continent. And this will help.
Thank you. I'm coming to the end. I would like to, I do think we have maybe a couple of minutes, but it's been a long, good discussion. And I would like to thank all of you. I believe I can speak on behalf of all the speakers that indeed there needs for successful migration partnerships, we need to invest in a long-term approach. There are, of course, short-term and medium-term priorities, but we do need the breadth for a long-term approach. We need comprehensive, holistic approaches, but a tailor-made. One size does not fit all, so we need to bring also all the actors together that are relevant in this equation. I get the message that sometimes we are too maybe much focused on our own interests, on our own realities, and it's important to bring the different realities actually together. And this, of course, will create the basis for trust. I think that was also mentioned, and that trust, of course, transcends into political or personnel changes over time. And we need to have this long-term approach. I cannot underline that more. Of course, partnerships are all about mutual benefits. And this requires a strong understanding of the partner's needs and objectives, as mentioned by you. But I think it's also very important to involve the civil society in this equation. This is with the example of the Caritas, where you play an important role in so many different dimensions and different levels, both in the countries of origin or destination and transit. So at policy level, operational level, advocacy level. I think this is an important partner in the equation. And of course, we cannot forget that successful bilateral or regional migration partnerships rest on successful foreign policy and long-term commitment influenced by other policy areas, such as trade, economics, and others. So I thank you very much for this panel discussion and for your contributions. And I would like to invite all of us to move to the next session, which is the East-West Perspectives on Geopolitical Europe. This is the final session of the day. Thank you very much.